Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Aaron from Aaron's Audio Corner, and today I've got the Klipsch RP-600M version 1 and version 2. If you want to know, should you upgrade to the RP-600M version 2, the one that just came out last week, which is this one, the answer is it depends. If you have equalization with a mini DSP or something along the lines where you can actually go and manually make equalization adjustments, then no. I think the answer really is just no. Keep your 600M, use some equalization adjustments because the horizontal directivity is actually better just by a little bit on the 600M. But if you do not have equalization, or maybe you don't really want to use it, you don't want to add the additional cost, then the 600M version 2 is going to be the winner.
Nice.
And if it were up to me, which one would I choose? I would go with the 600M2 simply because of the horizontal radiation is anywhere from about 10 to 20 degrees wider in horizontal radiation, which means you get more envelopment. You get more space, you get more room for the instruments in the soundstage to breathe, but you still get really good precision. And that is the first thing about the 600M2 that surprised me. And by the way, I bought both of these speakers for review. Last week when the 600M2 dropped, I had 3 or 4 people in the span of 2 or 3 hours ask me if I would be willing to review this one because Andrew Robinson and Steve Guttenberg both had reviewed the speaker. Now, I haven't watched either of those reviews. I just simply don't have the time or the luxury to go and do that between my regular day job and trying to review speakers and do things for my own channel. I would be curious to know what they thought of the 600M2. So if anybody after watching mine wants to chime in and say, yeah, you guys aligned or you didn't, I'd be curious to know. You give me a brief synopsis of what they have to say. So I just ordered it myself and I'll sell them on Patreon for a good deal. But that's where the speakers came from this time. I'm just wanting you all to know. In terms of looks, these speakers pretty much look the same. The main difference that you'll notice is the waveguide from the horn is extended further to be flush with the baffle, whereas on the version 1, it doesn't quite extend all the way out to the edge of the baffle. And that's going to help more with the version 2 because it's going to help with diffraction. So it's a smooth edge all the way out until the very end, whereas this one doesn't go smooth all the way out to the end. It goes smooth until about a quarter an inch, maybe a half inch or so, and then it abruptly stops and it goes flat to the baffle. The other major difference is the back of the speaker. The back of the V2 looks a lot more professional than the V1. The V1, honestly, is kind of cheesy compared to the V2, which the V1 on its own is fine. But compared to the V2, it's got these anodized bolts on here for locking in the speaker wires, and then it also has some pretty neat little jumper cables for biamping or unbiamping the speaker if you want to do that. But the overall aesthetic for the V2, yeah, it's a good change in my personal opinion. So that said, what do I think? Yes, I think the M2 is probably worth the upgrade if you're like me and you like more of a sense of envelopment. Now, that can come at a cost because if you have a very lively room, or let's say you got a reflection boundary right next to you where you're going to place the speaker, and I mean like within a foot or so, you may not want the extra radiation from the M2. You may prefer a more narrow radiation because that's going to keep the soundstage a little bit more closed in. And you may say, why do you want a more closed in soundstage? Well, because there's less reflections bouncing off the wall, and a more lively room is probably going to have a little bit more trouble with a speaker that doesn't have a more focused directivity. But the cool thing is, even though this one is a little bit wider in directivity, you still have precise image placement, and I really dig that. The M1 version also has a pretty strong resonance in the lower vocals. I think it's like 300 hertz or so, and that's really annoying, although you can equalize that out. The M1 in terms of tonality is a far cry from this one. This is a major, major upgrade in terms of tonality, but the M1 takes better to equalization, meaning that its horizontal dispersion is more linear throughout, whereas this one trails behind just a smidgen. So it seems to me like some of the updates were generated more for a more linear response for the M2 version, or I'm just going to say V2 version, whereas the V1 version was less linear in the overall timbre, but more linear in the overall dispersion, meaning that as you moved about the speaker side to side, the sound characteristics didn't change quite as much as it does with this one. But again, I really want to emphasize that the difference in that sound characteristic trade-off between these two is really quite small. And I would still take the advantage of this one, the new one, because it has a wider horizontal radiation. And I just enjoy that sense of envelopment more. It's a personal thing. But getting back to the linearity of the sound response. Now, this one is a lot hotter in response than this one. And both of them have a lifted treble. I think those of you who are maybe harder of hearing in the higher frequencies are probably going to dig this kind of sound that these speakers make. Personally speaking, I don't like that. I like a more neutral response in the high frequency and actually just overall. But with this particular speaker, if you just turn it off axis by about 20 degrees, so don't face it directly at you, but turn it off axis a little bit, then that shelves that top end a little bit. What I'm showing here is an estimated in-room response, and this is based on the anechoic data from my Klipsch near-field scanner. The reason that this data is important is it gives you a very good idea of the overall timbre of the speaker. You can actually look at this graphic and have a good idea of how the speaker is going to sound in your room. Now, it's not perfect, but when you're shopping and you're comparing multiple things, if you don't have the money to buy all of them to directly compare, this is a great alternative, and this is why I love this graphic. As you can see, the black line is the 0 degrees measurement, and this is with the speaker aimed directly at you on axis. The red line is if you tow the speaker out about 20 degrees, like I recommend. And then the blue line is me trying it with the speaker towed out about 30 degrees. It seems to me that the 20-degree angle is probably the best compromise between the overall timbre and getting that soundstage with the imaging precision that I personally prefer. Now, you're certainly more than welcome to try some of these other aims, but the 20 degrees is where I landed at for this particular speaker, and that's what I would recommend you try. And yes, it doesn't seem like a lot. It's about a dB to 2 dB in level difference from 20 degrees to 0 degrees, but that difference stands out to me in the room. Or use the magnetic grill, pop it on. This is the first speaker that I have seen that, in my opinion, actually does better with the grill on. Now, there is a little bit of variance in the directivity of the speaker when you put the grill on, and it does change a little bit in the frequency response as far as it kicks up a couple higher Q notches. But in my opinion, the benefit overall is worth those little attributes changing, because when you put the grill on, it actually tames those high frequencies a little bit, rolls them off a little bit. And I'm not talking rolls them off. I mean, relative to the high frequency boost, it kind of flattens them out, smooths them out a little bit more. So you don't really lose anything, in my opinion, by putting the grill on. And in fact, the speaker actually sounds better with the grill on. And while I'm showing you the estimated in-room response for the V2, let me show you the estimated in-room response for the V1 versus V2. The V1 is in the red and the V2 is in the blue. Both of these are made with the speaker aimed directly on axis 0 degrees. But as you can see, the V1 has a pretty big suck out in the estimated in-room response of about maybe 3 to 4 dB or so. As far as sensitivity goes, I think if you've been doing this a while, you know by now that Klipsch pretty greatly overrates their sensitivity. The way they give their sensitivity is not anechoic, but it is in-room half space. So anytime you have a half space measurement, you're adding 6 dB to the output. And whenever you put a speaker in a room, you're usually adding anywhere from 3 to 6 dB in output, depending on the frequency. So on average, Klipsch's specs are about 9 dB over anechoic. I believe that the V1 is measured at about 96 dB per Klipsch's spec, and that this one is 94.5 dB per Klipsch's spec. But according to my data, it's more like 85 and 86 dB. which is what you would expect because it has low end. Now, if these speakers of this size were actually in the 90 dB region, then there would be practically no bass for a 6.5-inch woofer. That's just a trade-off for high sensitivity drivers, and you have to go up pretty high, 12, 15 inches in diameter, to get a woofer that will give you low bass like these would. And while I'm talking about low bass, where do these roll off and how do these do in a room? Well, anechoic, the F3 is somewhere around 70 hertz, depending on which model, and they're pretty close to the same. They're a few hertz apart. And then the F10 is somewhere in that 40 hertz region. So the roll off isn't very, very steep like you typically see for a vented enclosure. It's a little bit more gradual. And in the room, you do have some decent bass, but in the room, in my experience with both of these speakers in both my home theater room and my living room setup, the bass rolls off at around 60 hertz. And then once it does that, you really just don't have much bass. So if you listen to a lot of music with kick drums like I do, expect that you're not going to have as much kick drum output. But the 120 hertz region for this particular model is a little bit boosted compared to the mid-range. So the mid-range has a little bit of a scoop. So you're going to get a little bit more punch harmonics in that region. So the 50 to 60 hertz kick drum, it has a harmonic at about 100 to 120 hertz as well. Well, since this is accentuated in that region, you have the sound and the timbre of the kick drum, but you don't really have the meat. Now, it's not a big deal. And actually, in my room, it was reasonable. But I think that if you are listening to music and you really want that meat, you are absolutely still going to want a subwoofer for either of these speakers, actually. Now, that little bit of a dip in the mid-range wasn't offensive. And generally speaking, a dip in the response at any particular frequency is going to be better than a peak in the response. But some of the bass, the bravado of some of the vocals that you enjoy is not going to be quite as present because those frequencies are a little bit more shelved in this particular model. And again, the high frequency area, if you like a speaker that has a little bit of a boost in the high frequency, maybe due to partial hearing loss, or I don't know, maybe you've got a very absorbent room, that's possible, then this speaker will be okay without the grill facing on axis. But if you're like me, I'm going to recommend that you either consider using the grill full time, putting them on axis, or you tow the speaker out about 20 degrees. The difference there, though, is going to be if you have them on axis and you use the grill, you're going to get a pretty smooth response, but you're still going to get really precise imaging. If you tow the speakers out a little bit, so facing them out more into your room, and then you take off the grill, well, you're going to have not quite as smooth a response as with the grill on facing at you. But the main trade-off there is going to be how the speaker reflections bounce off the walls and cause a little bit more of diffuseness to the soundstage precision. So the instruments within the soundstage aren't going to be quite as sharp. Personally, I would recommend using it with the grill on for any kind of like audiophile listening and pointed right at you, because I think that's the best of all the worlds. But obviously, it's up to you. Play around with that. Use my data as a guide to help you understand what you may like or why you may like a particular arrangement for this particular speaker. For fun, I took the anechoic data that I got from my clip-on near-field scanner and I loaded it into Room EQ Wizard, generated an EQ curve, and then applied that EQ via my mini DSP, set the speaker back up on the stand, measured it, and this is the result. Now, as you can see, the on-axis response is really quite linear, and it should be, but the directivity hasn't changed, which we also expect because you can't change directivity with EQ. So the directivity, the radiation pattern of the speaker is always going to be the same relative to the different angles, but you can change the timbre of the speaker. I will provide you with the equalization curves, bands of frequencies that I use. That'll be in the description below via my website where the review will be on for this particular speaker. Do that. And then maybe if you don't like something, you can change it, or you can change other attributes for the sound once you put the speaker in your room. That's how I would personally recommend going about modifying the speaker rather than taking it apart, spending money on new crossover components, and then fixing it up, and you may or may not like it, and now you're out $300 or $400. This is the estimated in-room response with the EQ applied in black and without the EQ applied in red. So you can see that the difference is pretty significant, and you do have a more sloped in-room response with equalization applied. Now, you may or may not like this. I don't know. But I think it's interesting to see what EQ can do to the response of the speaker and get a good prediction of how it's going to sound in your room. And like I said, you can always just simply undo it if you don't like it. You're not out $300 or $400 in crossover components and no way to make that money back. Now, getting back to the comparison, in terms of output capability, these speakers are pretty much right there. They're neck and neck. The compression data that I have on my website, which I'll drop right here, for both the speakers is roughly the same. There are some deviations between the two, but for the most part, yeah, they're pretty much the same. The distortion, pretty much the same between the two speakers. Now, again, some deviations, but pretty much the same, all things considered. So really, the difference here is in the overall timbre and tonality. And as I'll show you in the CEA 2034 data for the Klipsch version 2, you can see that, yes, it is a lot more neutral compared to the version 1. Now, all of this data that I'm showing you is going to be available on my website. And really what I encourage you to do is not just take my word for it, but go and look at the data. I've done a whole lot of testing on the version 2 speaker and a lot more testing than I normally do. I mean, I turned it off axis. I put the grill on. I think I shaved it a couple times. I did a lot of stuff for this particular speaker because really, based off the popularity of this one with all these other reviewers, and then people went out and bought them, I wanted to give you all who are considering buying the version 2 the most information that I could possibly give you to help you make the decision that makes sense for you. And if you still choose to buy the version 2 as an upgrade, then you'll have the data that goes along with it, and you'll be able to say, oh, based on Aaron's data, it makes more sense to turn it this way. Or maybe I should sit a little bit below the tweeter line, which, by the way, plus or minus 10 degrees is kind of the limit for this speaker, which is, I think, perfectly reasonable for most people. So that does it for this review. I hope I've answered your questions about why you may or may not want to buy the V2 or keep the V1. And right on cue, here's my German Shepherd. Come here, Ray. Come here. Can y'all see this? This dog is crazy. Anyway, I appreciate you watching. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comments below. And I will say that if you want to buy either of these speakers, it would be a huge help to me to help recoup some of my loss here if you would consider purchasing them through the affiliate links that I'll have below, either to Audio Advice or to Amazon. If you want to order them through that, it helps me with a 4 to 6% commission, which really isn't much, and it doesn't change my final recommendation or the data. So there's no influence there. It's simply, I've already done all this stuff. If you're going to buy it anyway and you want to help out the channel, please use one of those affiliate links. It would really and truly be greatly appreciated. Or if you just need to buy some new underwear for your stinky butt, you can do that through the Amazon link as well. Oh, by the way, the RP-600M 2, I didn't even know that was a thing. So people are asking me about that before I even had this video done. If you would like me to review that speaker, let me know in the comments below. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get a version 1 of that speaker, and I'm not going to spend any more money myself. I'll see if Audio Advice can hook me up with a loaner set, but I'm not going to do that if not many people want me to do that. So please leave a comment below if you're also interested in the 500M2, and I will see what I can do about doing a comparison, but I can't make any promises. I will talk to you all later. Have a good one. Peace.